Well, President Trump has asked the Justice Department to file lawsuits against the makers of opioids that have contributed, of course, to the nation's opioid crisis. Now, this is just one of many efforts federal and state governments are taking to combat addiction. Earlier, I spoke with CNN's chief medical correspondent, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, about the ways America is combating this crisis. So, doctors in several states, I know Michigan, Tennessee, Florida, they're limiting opioids due to the CDC restrictions, but that could have some harmful effects on people who really need it, could it not?
Yeah, I think that's the real balance. And, you know, I saw these CDC recommendations from the beginning, and they were recommendations, first of all. There's no law here that says doctors can only prescribe certain things. And in fact, if you look at the first page, it says it's for primary care doctors who are prescribing opioids for chronic pain outside of active cancer treatment, outside of palliative care, outside of end-of-life care. So it's certain patients they realize are just going to have probably a more likely demand for opioids. But yeah, this is the balance, Christy, is there are people who really need these medications probably.
How badly do they suffer without them?
You know, if someone has become dependent on opioids for pain and they've been taking them long-term, at that point, you know, they need them. They've also become dependent on them. So it would be really hard to sort of taper those patients down, especially when they don't have good alternatives for their pain. That's one of the big concerns. I will tell you, you know, and I think it's worth pointing out that we still take, you know, 80 to 90% of the world's opioids in this country. We're not even 5% of the world's population. My point is this, it's not that people don't need these medications, it's that the rest of the world has figured out a way to take a lot less. And, you know, people presumably have same pain issues and issues all over the world. So why do we take... Treat it differently. You know, different ways of treating pain, non-opioid based ways of treating pain. You have emergency rooms that are completely opioid-free emergency rooms. They don't...
In other countries.
In other countries. There's even one now here in the United States, and they've figured out ways to say, look, someone comes in with a broken hip, for example. Can you give injections into that area to basically decrease the inflammation as opposed to immediately starting to take pills that affect the whole body? I'm not saying that's going to be the answer for everybody.
Sure.
My point is we have not innovated with regard to pain hardly at all in this country because opioids have just been the answer to everything.
But that's so strange thinking about the medical advances and the resources that are available in this country.
Right.
Why have those alternatives not expanded, do you think?
Well, look, I mean, Christy, it's almost a philosophical question to some extent. I think, I mean, and it goes without saying, this is a huge business we're talking about. There's not a lot of incentives to change something that's a huge business where you have 80 to 90% of the world's supply coming into this country. So it's not to be patronizing to researchers who are doing good work out there, but morphine, you know, these opioid-based medications have been the answer for decades now.
So I wanted to ask you about President Trump this week asking Attorney General Jeff Sessions to sue companies who produce opioids. Is that an answer to trying to combat the crisis?
I would say that it's not an answer, but I think it's become a little bit it's become necessary at the state level. You know, there's 27 states that have already done this, right? They're already suing these manufacturers, and now the federal government's saying they may join some of those lawsuits and do one of their own. I think that for some time, you know, you've had certain companies that have been out there giving information that we now know was false. And that false information has probably created this culture of opioid use, and that was the intent. It's a big company. That's what they're trying to do. But
they're trying to make money.
They're trying to make money. So if they behave badly, if there were actual laws broken in terms of false information being given, the way that these drugs were distributed, the way that they paid people to promote them, whatever it may be, those are probably, you know, authentic lawsuits.
So there is a place where a lawsuit would be beneficial and legitimate.
I think so. I mean, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I think that if you look at what they're suing on, you can look at the evidence and say, well, yeah, there's a lot of those things seem to have happened.
So if Sessions came to you, let's say, and said, how do I determine what to pursue here and what not to pursue? What guidance, from a medical perspective, would you give him about looking at these companies and making that determination?
Well, I'm a forward-looking guy, so I think that if the effect of a lawsuit is to really help address the current problem, then I would focus on that with the Attorney General, saying what are going to be the guarantees now going forward that we're not going to still be in the situation where companies are shipping tens of thousands of pills to a community of 5,000 people. Why were they doing that? Yeah. What did they think was going to happen there? Those types of things have to stop. In terms of the punitive part of it, you know, I don't know. I think that's going to be a question probably for the lawyers to decide. But clearly, there's been hundreds of billions of dollars made on these drugs, and people have lost their lives as a result of it.
All right. Sanjay Gupta, thank you so much.